It's a pleasure to have you on Business Incorporated. I am BC Adebayo. On the program today, IMF achieves significant progress in talks with Kenyan government over economy. And Mozambique's Eurobond creditors make restructuring proposal. Plus, the CEO of Kenya's biggest telco, Safaricom, resumes work after a 9-month absence for medical treatment. Well, let's hit the markets right away, beginning from home here in Nigeria, where the all-share index is looking up at intraday. The South African index is trending lower at intraday with a 0.48% decline. Egypt was also 0.57% lower at lunchtime. Now, the Kenyan bourse is yet to open for the week, but the index closed up 0.23%. on Friday. And in the Middle East, the Abu Dhabi index is leading Monday's gainers at intraday with a 1.61% jump. The Dubai index was unchanged at midday Nigerian time, while in Qatar, the index was 0.37% positive. In Saudi Arabia, the index was down 0.04%. And in the U.S. stock index, which has turned slightly higher after hovering in the red ahead of Monday's open. Now, the Dow futures indicated a rise of about 15 points at the open. Dow futures rose 15 points at the open, and the S&P and Nasdaq futures were little changed. Now, investors will be paying close attention to earnings released by Tyson Foods, SeaWorld, and Weight Watchers. Investors will be mulling over the latest jobs numbers released on Friday. The Labor Department announced that after 2 strong months of U.S. job growth, payrolls for July came in below market expectations, with total non-farm payrolls rising by 157,000 below the 190,000 expected by economists polled by news agency Reuters. There are also concerns that a trade dispute between the U.S. and China will continue to intensify. And in Asia, the shares closed mixed on Monday, paring gains seen earlier as trade returned to the fore after another set of tariffs on U.S. goods were announced by China. The Nikkei 225 paired moderate gains seen earlier to close lower by 0.08% at 22,507.32. The broader topics ended the day down 0.56%, with 24 of its 33 sub-indices closing in negative territory. In South Korea, the Kospi slipped 0.05% to 2,286.5, with the index also giving up gains seen earlier. The S&P ASX 200 rose 0.61%, finishing at 6,273. And over in Hong Kong, the Hang Seng Index rose 0.34% after closing lower for the past 5 straight sessions. In the Chinese region, the Shanghai Composite declined 1.26%, ending at 2,705.84, and the smaller Shenzhen Composite lost 2.08%. Now, the United States Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, says that the country intends to fully enforce sanctions due to be reimposed against Iran early this week on orders from U.S. President Donald Trump. Now, speaking with reporters returning with him from an Asian trip, Pompeo said the White House will detail implementation of the measures later today, while Washington's so-called snapback sanctions are due to be reinstated against Iran on Tuesday. It says starting this week, Washington will reimpose sanctions on Iran's purchases of U.S. dollars, its trade in gold and precious metals, and its dealings with metals, coal, and industrial-related software. The United States has told other countries they must halt imports of Iranian oil starting in early November or face U.S. financial measures. And the International Monetary Fund's mission to assess the Kenyan economy achieved significant progress, and talks with the government will continue in the coming weeks. But that's according to the IMF. After a 2-week visit to Nairobi, Kenya secured a 6-month extension for its standby credit arrangement of $989.8 million from the fund in March, and is seeking another extension when it expires in mid-September. The IMF has preconditioned the extension of the standby credit used for balance of payment support on a number of measures, including the repeal of a cap on commercial lending rates, which was imposed in 2016. The Washington-based fund says the East African nation had met its fiscal targets during the 2017-2018 July to June fiscal year after the government managed to narrow the budget deficit to 7% of GDP from 9% the previous year. And in Mozambique, a core group of Eurobond creditors have made a restructuring proposal to the government. This includes extending maturities and adding instruments linked to future gas revenues. Mozambique admitted in 2016 to $1.4 billion of previously undisclosed loans, many of which went on upgrading maritime and military security. This prompted the International Monetary Fund and foreign donors to cut off support, triggering a currency collapse and leading to a debt default. In March, the government outlined 3 scenarios to overhaul its debt burden, but Eurobond creditors rejected them, balking at a second write-down in as many years. Now, the chief executive of Kenya's biggest telecoms operator, Safaricom, Bob Collymore, is back to work after a 9-month absence for medical treatment. The firm, which is 35% owned by South African group Vodacom, was jointly managed by the Chief Financial Officer Satish Kamath and Joe Ogutu, who is the Director of Strategy and Innovation, during Collymore's leave. Its shares have risen 11% to 28 shillings in the past 9 months. Vanilla farmers in Uganda have turned to weapons to protect their lucrative crop as a rising global demand for vanilla has seen thieves raid their farms to steal pods for sale. Now, this has forced the farmers to arm themselves or hire armed guards.
Rising prices of vanilla on the global market have become a threat to farmers in Uganda rather than a blessing, as armed thieves descend on farms to steal vanilla pods, which are later sold off to unscrupulous brokers. Farmers like Dominico Muzungu in the country's west have been forced to arm themselves or hire services of security guards to deter the vanilla hunters and to ward off thieves.
Vanilla matures after 9 months. We're forced to sleeplessly guard it both day and night, even if there are mosquitoes biting us. We would like the government to provide proper regulations for the sale of vanilla because all this illegal trade by foreigners is under the government's watch.
Some farmers have resorted to harvesting immature vanilla pods to save their crop, introducing poor quality vanilla to the market. The valuable beans are used to flavor various products from ice cream to coffee. Rwenzori Farmers Cooperative, which supports vanilla farmers in the region, is holding workshops for farmers on how they can protect their crop better and work together with security agencies to promote vanilla.
We look at close to 100 farmers that have lost their lives. Some of them lose their lives when they are heading to steal the vanilla, and because the vanilla fields are protected by maybe armed guards, other locally armed people with spears and guns, then they end up maybe spearing the person within the field. Others lose their lives because the thieves attack when they are armed. Others lose their lives because there are certain fights that come up, especially if you come, advance me the money, and you say, I'll give you the crop, and maybe at the end of the season, I don't honor, then we end up maybe getting into a fight, and then, the shooting starts.
Police say they are working with various agents to improve security for farmers. But farmers say police are not doing enough to deter thieves and are demanding improved security.
We have continued to partner with the leadership, local leadership, to make sure that the visibility, the alertness of the police and their guards, of the families, especially during these peak seasons, is high to deter the occurrences of the thefts, but also of the people taking the law into their hands to murder those they suspect to be involved in the search.
Uganda produces about 150 metric tons of processed vanilla annually, most of which is sold in the United States, India, and the United Kingdom. A kilo of unprocessed vanilla sells for about $67 locally, while processed vanilla fetches about $600 in the international market, as demand for natural rather than synthetic vanilla grows. Farmers in Madagascar, which produces nearly half the world's vanilla crop, are also facing similar challenges. Police and vigilante groups now guard vanilla farms in the country's north to keep armed robbers away.
Let's take some company news now. South African-based Absa Group is reporting a 4% fall in half-year profits, pulled down by costs related to its separation from former parent Barclays. Headline earnings per share came in at 877.8 cents, compared with 917.3 cents in 2017. The group says its earnings included 1.4 billion rand or $104.9 million costs related to its separation from Britain's Barclays, which sold down its controlling stake to just over 10% last year to focus on its home market and the United States. Absa's retail units, which launched WhatsApp banking and Samsung Pay earlier this year, grew headline earnings by 4% to 4.2 billion rand. And more company news from South Africa, and this time from platinum producer Royal Bafokeng, which says that its half-year loss narrowed but was still weighed down by an impairment cost, care and maintenance costs, and operational readiness costs from its newly acquired Masevi operations. The firm reported a headline loss per share of 6 cents for the first half of 2018, compared with a loss per share of 15.3 cents in 2017. HEPS is the main profit gauge in South Africa, which strips out certain one-off items. Now let's see what's happening in the European markets, which were slightly higher this morning amid a backdrop of renewed trade tensions and more earnings reports. Conrad Bussen is at the Frankfurt Stock Exchange to tell us more about this and other headlines in the market today. Conrad, a pity I can't see you, but let's begin our conversation with British lender HSBC's half-year earnings, which shows a 4.6% rise in pre-tax profits to $10.7 billion. Now, are HSBC's years of restructuring and cost-cutting measures not paying off handsomely?
Well, the increase in profits is certainly good news for HSBC, but the reaction of investors today to this earnings report is a negative one, and also HSBC's share price is currently lower than at the beginning of this year. Remember, last year, HSBC said it planned to concentrate more intensely on China and Southeast Asia. It wants to be the main global lender behind China's Belt and Road infrastructure project, which is crossing Asia and Africa. But not only does this investment cost a lot of money at first, HSBC is spending billions for new technology and also for new staff. But, of course, this strong engagement in China has a few investors nervous as well. The outlook for the Chinese economy is insecure. Last week alone, the stock market there lost around about 4%. HSBC must get to feel some of this. And for investors, this means be very, very careful. This might not be the time yet to heavily invest in the shares of this company.
Now, Conrad, can you take us through the trading day? Now, what are the top stories that will be making the big headlines?
Well, of course, some of the big political stories are also important for businesses. Iran, the sanctions will be imposed again. The American sanctions against Iran will be put into place tonight at midnight. This is midnight on the American East Coast, but it's about 6 o'clock or early in the morning in Nigeria and here in Germany tomorrow. Total German exports to Iran last year were around about 3 billion euros. Which is a very small amount compared to the total of German exports. But of course, this all has a huge potential to become a problem for businesses here in Europe. As in the past, the U.S. have shown that they are ready to fine banks, for example, that that are continuing to do business with Iran despite the U.S. sanctions. Also, another side effect could be on the oil price. There are some pundits on the oil market which predict an increase to $90 a barrel by the end of this year. This would be about $20 more than now. All this, of course, is contributing to the nervousness among investors.
Well, many thanks, Conrad, for this update, and we'll see you tomorrow. Well, still to come on Business Incorporated, we'll still have a couple of earnings to look at on the program. Do stay with us.